So I knew I'd be making this video someday as I saw this guy slip down the rabbit hole that is anti-feminism, racism, and just general all-around xenophobia.
So I'm already racist, sexist, and xenophobic in the first sentence of this video? Prove it to me. Where did I say something racist? Oh right, you can't find anything because I didn't, and being against Black Lives Matter does not count as racism, just like being against the Ku Klux Klan doesn't mean you're a traitor to your race. And xenophobic? What are you talking about? I never said anything about keeping people out of my society based on country of origin.
Of course, masquerading itself as free speech. And, of course, this guy thinks he's edgy despite actually sharing an opinion with 98% of the fucking human population. So, of course, SJWs apparently have this censorship power that I didn't know about on YouTube.
Yes, they do. It's called YouTube Heroes. It seems you haven't heard of that.
I'm sorry that YouTube is a shitty system, and I totally agree that YouTube is a very shitty system. So, of course, this video was sticking up to Mr. Dapperton, and if you're wondering, or for Mr. Dapperton, and if you're wondering why I'm not showing the video, quite honestly, because I don't think he's worth that kind of a response.
Haha, there it is! At least I have the courtesy of actually responding to your video, unlike you, who's just gonna say, I'm not worthy!
So I don't have this guy blocked, although I did briefly have him blocked. He has gone off the deep end. He's an absolutely angry person with this liberal view of what free speech is. Hate speech is not free speech.
Yes, it is. If somebody says something racist, it may be uncomfortable to hear, but sorry, it's free speech. You know how to destroy that person? Take their arguments and rip them apart, like what I'm doing to you in this video. This liberal view on free speech is essentially telling me that I can only be an anarchist if I am for some degree of censorship. Well, I put sugar on my porridge. I don't care if I'm not a true anarchist, if we are using that definition.
And let me define hate speech real quick, because hate speech isn't just saying that hate speech isn't just saying that you hate someone of a different ethnicity. Hate speech is saying something like you want to gas the Jews.
Oh! Godwin's law has been invoked. I'm sorry if you don't like it, but that person, no matter how scummy they are, can say such a thing. Are we going to start punishing thought crimes now?
Do you seriously think that should be allowed to be said? Like, seriously, if you think that should be allowed to be said without any kind of legal ramifications, without any kind of sanctions being put on by the greater community, such as getting the piss beaten out of you, well then, you're a fucking liberal.
If you don't censor nationalists and fascists, you are liberal! No, actually I'm being tactical. I'm tired of hearing about the non-existent threat that a small group of skinheads present, but we're going to talk about it like World War III is around the corner if we don't beat the shit out of these people now. This is how a reactionary thinks. A true reactionary. Someone said something hateful, now we must beat the ever-loving shit out of them. It's the only way. And it doesn't work. If it did, we'd be out cracking Nazi skulls. When you have a media as strong as they are, beating up the nationalists will only give them a larger platform of victimization to speak at. Look at Richard Spencer now. He's become an icon of the white supremacist agenda, all thanks to Antifa.
To be honest, no, if someone says that they want to gas the Jews, I'm fucking throwing a Molotov through their window.
And that will become news. Anarchists will be branded as hooligans, criminals, thugs, and nobody will want to join their movement after seeing the footage as they turn on their TVs. People have their lives ruined for smashing a few windows, and they'll never be able to get back into that position because of poverty. If you're a convicted felon, you can't get a job and you suffer. This is not productive to anarchism in the West, because the police state and strong media coverage. Now don't get me wrong, these tactics may work in different scenarios, I'd say they would. In a country with little media coverage and a weak police force, I would support these tactics. This is not what the Western world is like.
That's just the way it works. Now, I don't mean that literally, but I mean, that's the kind of sentiment I'm gonna have. The person's subhuman in my mind.
Yes, if I'm not an Idpol bootlicker, I'm automatically subhuman. How very anarchist of you, wanting a form of hierarchy, Idpollers over non-Idpollers. How very anarchist of you.
When it comes to shit like this, yeah, some guy with an 88 tattoo is talking about how we need to gas all the Jews and lynch all the blacks. That's a threat of violence. It may not be a direct threat of violence, but it is a threat of violence. It is an advocacy for violence. And it's not even an advocacy for defensive violence. It's an advocacy for violence against a smaller group of people, against a group of people that is worse off in society, that has historically been persecuted.
So apparently, since there's a white nationalist in my comment section, and I decide not to censor them, that means I'm automatically advocating violence against non-whites? What the fuck?
And, of course, I don't know what the fuck Mr. Dapperton's video about. Oh, I'm sorry, Anarchy Ball. Fuck. You guys may know him as Anarchy Ball, but yeah, Mr. Dapperton, as he's now called himself because he didn't have enough of a reputation as an elitist prick, apparently. Yeah, so I don't know what his fucking video was about, the one that got flagged, but if it got flagged, I highly doubt that it was a, quote, SJW crusade. Those don't fucking happen.
YouTube heroes?
They really don't. They're never enough. The Flame Wars, at this point, they've stopped doing, like, these SJW Flame Wars no longer exist because every time that they happen, the anti-feminists do the same shit, and they have bigger audiences, so they have much more power for what ANCOM would call censorship. Although, on the anti-feminist side, it usually is censorship because there's nothing to actually break community guidelines.
And I will call them out if they engage in censorship. That's just dogma in the other direction. My problem is the lack of self-reflection in my own ideological circle. When I tell them they are failing, they don't take what I said into account. They just call me a liberal, or a fascist, or a Nazi, or whatever buzzword is currently popular. I specialise in that sector because anarchism on YouTube has just become a haven for the social justice warriors, and it shouldn't be. It should be a realm of free thought and innovation.
It's not my fault that hate speech is not allowed in community guidelines. And the thing is that you can contest it. Like, if you really think that you are unfairly flagged, I'm sorry, but YouTube has a big system that they have to manage. So I'm sorry that if you get flagged, they kind of prioritize these things. But seriously, like, he should have just fucking contested it and move on. And maybe actually done a substantive video on why his video wasn't hate speech. Because just because you say something is parody at the beginning doesn't mean that it is.
And there we have it. The typical behaviours of the social justice sphere. If you dare dissent from the social justice anarchist norm, you are liberal. You are racist. You are advocating for racism against blacks. I'm not saying this. This is what he said in his video. Then they'll alienate you, attack you behind your back, and eventually, I wouldn't be surprised if I get flagged. This was ANCOM. Keep challenging dogma in your own philosophy, unlike these idiots.